I'm so excited to have my good friend Janna on today. Janna is so amazing with all of her background. Janna, welcome to Be the Person podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have our audience learn more about you, a little bit more about the story, and I have a whole list of questions for you. But before we jump in, why don't we just go back and tell a little bit about you and your story?
Yeah, back in 2012, April of 2012, I live here in Texas in the Hill Country, and I woke up one morning with a bullseye rash on my right inner thigh, and at that time, I had never heard of Lyme disease. The rash didn't itch, it didn't hurt, and country girl me was like, "Oh, I'm fine, it'll go away," and it did. It faded away over the next few weeks. And I had some headaches and I did feel a little bit off. But as a mom of two young toddlers, um, I I just kind of chalked it up to just life. So 6 months goes by and we're getting near October, November. And beginning in around August, my health just kind of started to deteriorate. And I started to develop some neurological symptoms like anxiety, um, um, feeling just like panic, um, brain fog really, really bad. And then again, I chalked it up to hormones, mom of two young kids. And here we come, November of 2012, and my body just stopped and I could no longer function. It was like my body was here, but there was nothing there. And I had no idea what was going on. And my mom came and stayed with me to help with the kids because I couldn't even bathe myself. And I went to doctor after doctor, probably around 9 or 10 doctors in about 14 months, could not figure out what was going on. I was told it was my thyroid, it was my hormones, adrenal dysfunction, you name it. And I did. I had all of those things going on, but why? Why all of a sudden at 31 years old did my body turn on me? And I just would not ever accept the answers that I was getting from conventional medicine that it's just my thyroid, it's my adrenals, it's my gut, it's my hormones. I just wanted to know, but why? I've never had these issues. Why is this happening to me? Nothing that they were giving me with supplements or thyroid medication was helping at all. In fact, I was getting worse. And Annie, that's when I started to learn functional medicine, and it resonated with me because it looks for the root cause instead of putting a band-aid over it. And conventional medicine is great, don't get me wrong. There is a purpose for conventional medicine, and immediate care, but not when it comes to disease or something like Lyme disease. So I found functional medicine, and I found a functional medicine doctor, and he was clear across the country, in Massachusetts, actually. Anyways, come to find out, I did have Lyme disease, um, and conventional medicine actually failed me 2 times on that. Doctors had tested me, and the conventional standardized test for Lyme is not very good, and it showed negative. Functional medicine, though, they use different types of testing, and of course, insurance doesn't pay for it, and that's another issue because it's super expensive. Um, but come to find out, I was super sick with Lyme disease, 8 different strands, and then a host of a whole lot of other ailments going on, like I listed earlier. And it was such a relief to know what was making me sick. But then I felt like I got hit again when I found out they don't know how to get rid of it or what's going to work on each person. And then that was a completely different journey for me.
Wow. That is a lot that you went through because I know you have two kids at that time. You're not able to care for them. You're going to all these different doctors trying to find out what's wrong. So you find out you have Lyme, and then what was your process from there? What did you use to get to where you're at today?
Oh, I literally was like, well, the doctors are going to help me and we're going to figure it out. And um You know what's funny is when I found out I had Lyme disease, and I remember when the results came in, I got on my laptop because my doctor was in Massachusetts. I'm in Texas. So everything was done over the computer or phone. It wasn't in person. I remember getting my laptop and typing in Lyme disease. And what is the first thing I saw? That bullseye rash. And I realized that I had that in my body for 18 months, right? So we knew I had chronic Lyme. And basically, what happens is when you get infected with the Borrelia bacteria, which is Lyme disease, and there's many different strands. Borrelia bacteria is the bacteria, and then there's tons of different strands of it, right? When you get infected with it, if you do not, if you're not aware of that, which most people are not, most people, only 30% of the people that get infected with Lyme disease develop that rash. The ticks are so tiny that these little deer ticks, it could look like a freckle or a speck of pepper. They're that small. It isn't this like big thing like you see on dogs all the time. Uh,
Yeah.
so if you do not get treated within the first few weeks to 30 days at the most, it turns into chronic Lyme. They're little corkscrew shaped bacteria. And so when you first get infected, they're just kind of floating around. The longer they're in your body, they just kind of literally screw into your tissues. And so it's really, really hard to get them out. Then they develop a biofilm around them, which is like this, imagine like this big, thick, hard bubble around it, and you just can't penetrate it, right? So that's what's chronic Lyme. That's what it is. And so that bacteria had been in my body for 18 months. And the first thing they did is we did a few months of doxycycline, which is an antibiotic, and it doesn't do anything at that point. In fact, antibiotics are really, really hard on our gut. And since 80% of our immune system is in our gut, your gut health is everything. You know, a lot of your neurotransmitters, they're produced in your gut. So when your gut health is out of whack, you're not going to feel good mentally. Your immune system's weak. So my immune system was absolutely shot. Not only did I have a candida overgrowth and a leaky gut, heavy metal toxicity, but when I did those 2 rounds of antibiotics, my health went way down. And I mean, I was at a point of just the depression was so bad. Honestly, I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't remember my kids' names. I couldn't remember where I lived. I literally was just a shell of a woman. And, you know, the depression was just so bad. I would pray when I went to bed at night. I just didn't wake up in the morning. And, you know, Lyme disease um, kills people, but the way it does is they take their own lives because it's an unbearable disease. The neurological symptoms are horrific and a complete nightmare. And the doctors also, the antibiotics didn't work. They put me on the Zang protocol, which is, and you know, y'all have to remember this is 10 years ago at this point, probably about 10 years ago when I finally figured out what it was, right?
Mhm.
So the protocols were much different then. And even now it's really, really hard. In fact, I don't know if the Zane protocol is still used. It did not work. That's an herbal protocol. But that's where I found essential oils because I just wouldn't stop researching. And I learned a lot about the diet and that sugar feeds all diseases. And that with food, everything I put in my body, whether it was beverage or actual food to chew, I was either feeding that disease or fighting it. And so it just became this battle, this war within me, right? Um, but I will tell you what, the essential oils not only and by no means should anyone just go take essential oils. This was a lot of research I did. I did have some guidance with my doctors because I talked to them about that. Um, and there's only certain ones you can put inside your body, and it's done in a specific way. So that's very important to note. No one should ever go get essential oils and just put them in their body. Um, it's a very specific protocol. And you know, the die-offs that you have when the bacteria start to die off is horrific because when the biofilm bursts, all of those toxins inside of it are released in your body and they got to get out somehow. So getting rid of Lyme disease and healing, um, it's a multifaceted process because you also have to work on your detoxification constantly, your lymphatic system. You can't just have the bacteria die off and then not have a way that they get out of your body. So it's a lot of work and you have to do it every single day. And the thing is that if that might sound easy, but you have to think about the fact that the people around you, they don't have to live that way. They don't have to eat that way. And that can be really, really hard sometimes to feel like you're not supported, because it's important to note that Lyme disease, it's an invisible disease, right? I didn't look sick from the outside. It'd be like looking at me right now. And I'm sitting here telling you how bad I feel. And you're like, but you look fine. So people oftentimes, they just assume you're complaining, right?
Mm.
So I'm a big advocate for that. You don't ever know what people are dealing with inside, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can look at somebody and, like you said, they look fine, but everybody has a story of what's going on the inside.
Yep.
So you do the essential oils, you start to feel a little better, and then you
Mhm.
take sugar out of your diet. What else does your diet look like? What did you do
Yeah,
there?
I did a complete overhaul of my diet. And this was, 2013. Um, that's when like it was people were really starting to kind of talk about paleo, but it
Mhm.
was kind of like far-fetched out there, right? Um, and that was just like when gluten-free was kind of still weird.
Yeah.
So, um, at first I just went paleo. That means I eliminated grains, cow dairy, legumes, sugar. I eliminated just basically everything that I love to eat, even high sugar fruits. I didn't even eat a lot of fruits. And I had had a banana every day of my life since I was little. So there's,
Yeah.
grapes, all of these high sugared fruits, like the bacteria, the disease in your body, the overgrowth, whatever it is in your body, it doesn't know if you just put an apple in there or a Snickers bar. Sugar feeds disease in any form. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a natural sugar, doesn't matter. It's sugar. It's the way it all works when it's in your body, right? It turns into glucose or high fructose fruits, things like that. So at first I was just paleo and I didn't notice a real big difference right then. But what I did start to learn about was keto, and keto was not really heard of back then. It sounded crazy, but you have to remember when you are so sick and all you want to do is, there's a saying that I have, which is when you're healthy, you have 1,000 dreams. When you're sick, you have one. And I didn't care what people thought. I didn't care how far fetched something was. I did what I had to do for my body. When I learned about keto, it just really resonated with me because it took away all sugars in the sense of I'm not going to feed that disease. I'm going to feed me and nourish me and starve the disease out. So, what that looked like to answer your question was a lot of healthy fats, a lot of vegetables, clean sources of protein. Um, I had to learn how to cook. I didn't really know how to cook that great before. Um, it was it was every little thing that I put into my body had so much thought. Making my own bone broth, which now I buy it, but things were just different back then. So when I started to incorporate culture foods, um, the right supplementation, it's important to tell people that when you have a disease in your body, it robs you of everything you put in it. So it's very, very normal and common to be deficient in minerals and vitamins because that disease, that bacteria, it takes it all from you. So it's like I'm putting things in this like a putting it in a cup, but the bottom's gone, right? It just goes right out. Um, so as I'm going through these die-offs, which happened about every other week or so, when a die-off would end, I felt better than I did before. And the cycle repeats. Then I incorporated the keto. And as I began to starve that disease out, Annie, and nourish my body and give my brain the healthy fats it needed, heal my gut. That's why I did a lot of collagen, the bone broths, the cultured foods. That was a huge turning point for me. That was when I got into nutrition and found my calling of really just helping and showing others how to feel their very best and how to make your body a place where disease doesn't want to live, but where you thrive.
I love that. And I love all of the steps you took because I imagine 10 years ago, what you're talking about now is becoming a little bit more mainstream. Some of it still for a lot of people isn't. But I think 10 years ago, I can imagine the looks that you got thinking, you can't do this with food.
Yeah, and it was hard to find some of the products. So that's, they were there, but it was so different. It really was. It is not, I was at an event last weekend and the lunch was served. Okay? If I'd have been at the same event 10 years ago and lunch was served, there would not have even been a gluten-free option. At this event, it had the little bitty signs at each little station, gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan.
Mhm.
That just tells you there's such a huge difference in how far we've come.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that makes such a difference. And I think people are starting to realize food truly is medicine. What
Mhm.
we put in our body makes it stronger or weaker. And I love that approach that you take to nutrition.
Thank you. And, you know, um, when one of the questions I get asked often is, how did you maintain that? How did you stick to it?
Mhm.
Um, or didn't that suck? And I'm like, no, it sucked to feel like crap. And there was a turning point for me. When you find out what's going on in your body, the first thing you do is you get on the internet, right? And you dive into research and just try to figure it all out. And Dr. Google can be really great sometimes, but I will tell you what, there's a lot of negativity out there. And when I would search Lyme disease back then, it was just horror story after horror story, people not getting well, and it just not good stuff. And when you're already in a really bad place and scared to death and not knowing where's the light at the end of this tunnel because I don't see it. Will I ever get well? I
Mhm.
didn't know. But it really affects you to read the negativity. It gets into your body and into your mind. And one day when I'd hit my lowest point, when the day that I was on an overpass and I just wanted to veer off and end it, I realized that day, I said, you know what? God, if you put me here to go through this to help one person, send me through it. And I decided right then and there, I couldn't live my life like that anymore. And that, you know what? I'm not looking at the negative anymore. And there was a turning point right there where, and it's really, really hard. Your brain doesn't think clear. The brain fog was so intense. It created derealization, confusion. I mean, times I didn't even feel like I was really there. So that's really, really important to note. And in that moment, I decided that I was going to believe differently. I believe I can get well. I believe that I can overcome Lyme disease and get rid of it. I believe it can fully be eradicated from my body and not just go dormant. And I remember the moment I did that and I wrote it on paper and I put it in what I created as a prayer box. I had a prayer box back then and I still have it on top of my closet. And I started that day. And when I did that, Annie, every single day I would reread it, write it, say it over and over because the negative didn't leave my mind. The symptoms were just there. And when I started to think differently, I started to do differently. My actions that I took, the things I did, everything started to go towards my thoughts. That right there, Annie, was a turning point for me because I realized the power of my mindset. And I didn't notice it at first. It was as time went by, and I'm like, why did things start to get better? I started to change the way I thought about it. I chose to think differently. I started to just really hold on to that faith that I had, the faith that I prayed that would break so I could give up. And I just held on to it. And that right there was the beginning and the first catalyst in my life where I realized the power of the mind. And so when people ask me that question, it was my mindset. It was me mentally choosing something every day that I did not see, that wasn't tangible. I just had to believe it.
I love so much about that. I hate that you had to go through it, and that I'm sure those were years that were just really, really hard. But I love how you choose mindset, and the fact that you were so hopeless and you decide something different and you write it down, you write it in the form of a prayer and read it every day. And you can see that now as the turning point, I think is so incredibly helpful, because I know you coach as a nutritionist, but you also coach on mindset, because I think whether you're sick or not, food and mindset go hand in hand. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah. And I believe it not believe your mindset determines the success of anything else in your life, right? It's like it is the foundation, so to speak. If I go to build a house on a cracked slab or a crooked slab, then the house is not going to be very sturdy. It might fall down. The foundation is so very important. So I can want to eat better, or lose weight, or get fitter, or whatever it is, change habits. I can want that all day long and I can do some things towards it. But what is actually going to make it work? What's actually going to make it last and be sustainable? It is the mindset. Your reason for doing something has to be really big to stick with it. My reason for eating the way I had to eat, which, by the way, I still maintain, once you heal your body, um, once you start to eat in a manner that's really for your body, and you get away from all of the preservatives, the dyes, the sugars, all those things that they put in there that make it addicting, your palate changes. And um, if I eat sugar, I feel like crap for the whole day, and sometimes even the next day. It feels like I have a hangover. Um, but my reason in sticking with that was that all I wanted to do was get well. That was my goal, and I was bound and determined it was going to happen, and I was not going to give up. And I've seen it happen before with people, even people that I've helped that were really, really sick, whether it was Lyme or autoimmune, that struggle, that mental struggle, right? Everybody wants everything overnight, the magic pill.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't happen that way. We can't treat our bodies like crap and put crap in it. And then when we feel bad enough to do something about it, and that's the thing, right? People don't feel bad enough. It's just they chalk it up to life. Well, I'm busy. Well, it's my hormones or whatever. People are used to kind of walking around feeling blah.
Yeah.
And what happens is when people finally feel bad enough, that's when they go to try to get well. So your body talks to you through symptoms. You don't just feel like crap. You don't just constantly have headaches or bloating or gut issues or anxiety or brain fog, depression, whatever. You don't just have that. That is your body talking to you. So your body whispers, and then it talks, and then it yells, and then it screams. By the time people come to me, their bodies are yelling and screaming. And they're like, oh, it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually pretty quick. But the thing is it's that mindset. You have to want something really, really bad and have a really good reason for it. Because I believe that everything great in life, sometimes you got to get really uncomfortable to get there. We grow in the discomfort.
Yeah. I love that you share that it's not a quick journey, that it is, it's in relative 3 to 6 months is pretty quick. But a lot of times when people are sick, it's going to
Mhm.
take that long to heal their body and do it through food. But what would you say to the person? You brought something up that I think is super relevant. It might not be Lyme or autoimmune, but they just don't feel great. They're bloated, they have headaches, maybe they're overweight. And it's not, like you said, life is busy. It's not terrible, but they're also not great. What advice would you have?
Yeah. I'm sure the people around me, my my friends and family get tired of me saying this. It is all about your gut health. Your gut health is the key to optimal health. Your brain health, your immune system, your gut health is everything. It really, really is. And so that's why for me, I've always focused on the gut health. So when people come to me, the literally they just want me to say, "Oh, this is what's wrong. Take this, you'll feel better." That's just not the approach. The approach is more about how do you sleep? What do you eat? When do you eat? How much are you eating? People overeat. They start their morning off with high sugar, high carbs, and it just sets their blood sugar tone for the day, right? And it's this constant roller coaster of you got to put more sugar and carbs in your body because your energy drops. So if someone said, just tell me what to do to feel better, I would say, well, look, I don't know how you eat, and we don't have time to go into that. So I would say, this is what you do. You need to cut out a lot of the sugar. You need to cut out wheat, gluten, corn. You need to cut out all the carbs and stop overeating. You need to incorporate probiotics, digestive enzymes. Um, and most of the time, people really don't need 3 meals a day. That's a lot of food. Just think about every time you eat, your body has to start working and digesting. And so in your body, if you're doing all these other things, working out, working, taking care of kids, whatever, eating all the time, snacking all the time, your body doesn't get a damn break. It needs a break. Dinner should be the lightest meal of the day, and definitely be done eating 3 hours before bedtime. Your digestive system slows down at the end of the day, just like we do, right? So the biggest tips I could ever give somebody is really to cut out that sugar, the dyes, the artificial sweeteners, the processed foods. Eat some vegetables, have some healthy fats, clean sources of meat, just and taking a really good high quality probiotic. That right there does wonders.
Yeah. It's crazy when you start to look at all the food labels, because one of my sons had some gut issues and we really dove into all the food labels and then started doing the research, and things that absolutely aren't allowed in other countries are allowed here in the US. And the things in our foods, I've gotten a lot of pushback from the family, but there are certain things of trying to get rid of in our house. And we're not all the way there, but we're making changes slowly to get there, because it really is. Once you start looking at those labels, it's scary, the things that are in there.
It really, really is. One of my favorite people, I followed her, read her books for a long time, was food. She's on Instagram, and she shares some really eye-opening stuff. She compares the labels, right? Of this is what this cereal has, the ingredients here in our country, and this is the label in Europe. And here we are in our own country, and it's loaded of dyes and tons of different kinds of sugars, and they put chemicals in it. And when I learned this in nutrition school, it made me sick to my stomach. They put chemicals in the food, ingredients that they have already done testing on in labs to see how addicting it is. They want you to get addicted to that food. And there are certain ingredients that do that. Sugar is definitely one of them. Um, as a mom of three kids, my oldest is 15 and my little girl, she's about to be 13. And my youngest is 7. But as a mom of three kids and being a nutritionist, my kids don't eat perfect. It's a struggle, especially with the 15-year-old. And I was in absolute shock when they got into middle school and now high school at the crap the school cafeteria offers. There's a thing at our school called at the middle school called Snack Shack. Annie, it is the worst junk food possible that a human could buy, and it's served at the kids' schools. And it makes me so frustrated because I was actually reading statistics yesterday in a report about it was the increase and rise in diseases and disorders in our country, and it had diabetes, ADD, depression, anxiety, you name it. And it was like 65%, 75% more than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so our kids are walking around anxious, brain fog, feeling like crap. And on all this medicine, my God, I, it's they just need to eat healthy. They get rid of the dyes and the sugar. My oldest kid, the first time I learned about dyes, before I was ever into the health world, he was just really little, and I just kept noticing he had certain things. He literally was bouncing off the walls, acting crazy for 6, 8 hours, and it was dye. That's what it did to him. Dye is known literally for causing anxiety and ADD in people, and especially in our children.
Wow. Yes, that's crazy. And I'm going to link to in the show notes to Food Babe. I just started following her and started looking at all her research. She's
Yep.
been instrumental in getting big corporations to change some of their policies. I was just
Mhm.
reading, she got Subway to take, there's basically it's yoga mat pieces that they put in their buns, and still so many of the fast food places do it. However, in Singapore, it was a $450,000 fine, but it's still allowed in the US. So, what
Yeah,
goes on and what's in some of our food, um, definitely we need to take a look at. But I know as parents, it can be overwhelming. It can be like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do or how to do this. So I think just looking at those little things at a time, like starting to read your sugar label, like you said, how much added sugar is in all of these things. And that can be one easy step to start to take it down.
absolutely. And to go off what you said about reading labels and things, that's one of the first things I try to teach people. And it really just makes me sick to my stomach because, as you know what I'm going to talk about too. It's when you're in a grocery store and you look at a label, most people look at the front label. And what do they put on there? Healthy, natural, organic, low sugar, sugar free. Sugar free, if you see sugar free, that means artificial sweeteners. Those are cancer causing. People are misled, literally. The labels and the links they go to appeal is absolutely just crazy to me. And people don't even rarely flip it over. The only people that typically flip it over and look at the back of a box of something or a bar, whatever it is, are the people that have food allergies. Other than that, they look at the front and it's like, well, it's natural, it's organic. It's whole grains, protein. They sell these, I think, Kind protein bars. My kids like them. They're higher in sugar than I like, so I don't really buy them that much. They call them protein bars. There's not that much protein in there, but it's appealing because it says kids, protein, healthy.
Mhm.
And gosh, if you can just turn it over and look at that label, honestly, I personally don't ingest more than 8 to 9 grams of sugar a day. And kids need more than that. They run around and play. But for my kids, I will not buy anything if it's more than 7 or 8 grams of sugar. It's not just that item that you're going to eat. Like, oh, that's not that much sugar. It's on top of everything else you put in your body for those 24 hours, right? It adds up. So if I give my kids something that's 10 grams of sugar, and think about the little bitty, what are they called? Fruit snacks, those little fruit gummies.
Mhm.
Those are like 10 grams of sugar in a little package. My kids think they need two at a time. You add that on top of all the other stuff in a juice box and all this. Our kids are having, oh gosh, I don't want to say it wrong. I saw it the other day. It's like over 80 grams of sugar to 100 a day.
Yeah, it's
It's
so
crazy.
high. So
Yeah.
high. And like you said, you think those 10 and don't add up, but they really, really do.
Yeah.
And it makes such a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I like to be a big advocate of that and just teaching people just the basics. Like just look at the sugar. Sugar feeds all diseases, y'all. And I've had someone say one time, like, you're either feeding a disease, fighting disease when they heard that comment. It's like, but I'm not sick. And I'm like, I'm not meaning you only need to eat this way if you're sick. Do you want to make your body a place that a disease wants to be and grow into? I personally don't. And having had gone through one, I'm scared to death of that. I will never fall off the health wagon that I've been on that has kept me healthy for 10 years. I was able to completely heal my thyroid, completely eradicate Lyme, get rid of the leaky gut, the heavy metal toxicity, all of it through my diet and supplementation.
I love that you did that. And I saw a video yesterday that went perfectly with this. It said, if you need a box to say it's natural, it's healthy, it's organic, it's not. You don't need that. You should be able to look at the food and know. Like when you look at a cucumber or an apple or something, you know it's healthy. You don't need a box to tell you that.
Yeah, I like that. I actually haven't heard that before, and I actually love that because it is so true. And when you go into a grocery store, Whole Foods is not as bad, but if you go into a regular grocery store, the parameters that people walk through and stuff, it's all the crap,
Mhm.
literally. And sometimes these unhealthy foods are cheaper than organic produce. I mean, it's like, well, why not buy that? You know? And then your taste buds, your brain, it's addicted to it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's a really hard battle that uh our food administration makes it really, really hard to eat healthy.
So what would you say to that? Because I know that's true. Food manufacturers are putting things in to
Mhm.
make us want more. That's their goal.
Yep.
But there's also a fact that we can break this. And I know because I'm a busy mom and of owning businesses, having 3 kids, and trying to really figure this out. And again, our family does not by any means do this perfectly. We're still learning and growing,
Yeah.
but we've made significant changes. And I am not a cook. Anybody that knows me knows that if I can do this, you guys, we can do this too. And I'm gonna link to some of the tools that we have. And I've used Janna as a resource. She's incredible. But really, if we look at this and think about reading those food labels and just starting, okay, I'm going to make one change a week. What could that one change be? And you've given us so much information already that I just love that we can start to do this. It doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, I'm going to go clean out my pantry and throw every single thing away. Because to me, all that brought in was overwhelm.
Yeah.
And if you're sick, you may be there and we may need to do that. But I think as a parent of making those changes, I've just
Mhm.
tried to go a little bit at a time.
Yeah, and that's the best approach, Annie. It really, really is. Um, in my house, I always try to do so. My kids used to eat a whole lot better when their father and I divorced. the eating habits are now much different over there. So every other week, right? There's like this different way of eating. So I think my biggest tip for parents and honestly anyone who's just like, I can't imagine going from eating like this to that. That's on the other end of the spectrum, right? Make one healthy swap. So, for example, the other day, my little one, he wanted an ice cream bar, and he asked for. Trying to think what else he asked for. Anyways, I basically told him he couldn't have both. He had to choose. So it's making little healthy swaps as well. If you have that now, you're not going to have any other form of sweets later, right?
Mhm.
And then the rule in my house is there's no sweets at night. Um, there's some really great brands of sweets that's important for people to know that are not addicting, that are not bad, or that are sweetened with monk fruit, which is natural, like hardly any sugars at all, and full of healthy fats. And that's the Chalk Zero brand. They're chocolates, they have syrups, you name it. They even have cookies now. And that's the one thing my kids know they can always have, right? So making a healthy swap is really, really important. Um, and then, for me in my house, I don't do dyes, and they know that. I'm like, I'm sorry, it has dyes in it. So for me, it's like, I'm not going to take everything away from you, but I also teach my kids why we want to eat healthy, so they can feel their very best, so they can do great in school, so they can perform well in football later, whatever it might be. Um, and so, now that my girl is getting into, puberty and stuff like that, I've really noticed a difference in her eating healthier and less sugar, because that greatly affects our youth girls big time. Youth girls are very, very easily prone to anxiety and depression. And so I know with her, keeping the sugar minimal and having them also on a good probiotic has really made a difference.
I love that. And I love just your approach that you shared with your kids and how you do it and how we can make those little swaps. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, but there
Mhm.
are some things that, like you said, you really read the food labels and you are looking for what they can and can't have.
Yeah, and you know what, Annie, and I know this is something that you did when you were like, okay, I can learn to do some things in the kitchen, right? Because not everybody cooks, and you know what? We don't even have time to cook sometimes. We
Mhm.
just don't. But what I have found that really helps is I feel like it's always a mind game with kids, right? If I can make it seem like it's their idea somehow. So getting them to help in the kitchen. So for me, a few years ago, I actually lost 100% of my smell and taste. So I cannot smell or taste anything. There's nothing there. And it sucks. But guess what? My little one, his job, everybody has their little job in the kitchen, right? His
Mhm.
job in the kitchen is to be the taste tester. And I was like, well, it's a really big job. And it requires you to taste everything at least once. I mean, just little bitty tricks, anything that manipulates them into thinking it's their idea to eat healthy. It's made a really big difference. But no, I even do a reward chart, and one of the stars that they can get is for eating healthy, and the less sugar they get and stuff like that. Just anything to bribe them.
Yeah. What a great idea. Sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited because now, one, I want you to share with how to work with you as a nutritionist, but I also want you to talk first about your new book coming out in December, about what it is and why you decided to write it.
Yeah. So this has been a true labor of love. I knew, probably about 8 years ago, I just had this feeling inside, I was going to write a book. And at the time, I had healed from Lyme disease, and it was going to be about that and the journey. Because when I was sick, it was really, really hard to find any story or book about Lyme disease that wasn't clinical.
Mhm.
Um, and so I really I honestly didn't know I was going to get a book deal. I was just talking to a publisher about my idea and what the book process looked like, book writing process. And she offered me a book deal that day. And so as I started to write this book, the first meeting I had with her after that, that was the moment she said, "You know, this book's not going to be about Lyme disease, right?" And I was like, I'm actually realizing that. I think sometimes the things that we think we might write about for people that write, there's a book within you that you might not even realize is there yet. And that was this case with this book. And this book is all about mindset, shattering limiting beliefs. Because most of the time, what's stopping you from living the life you want to live, being the person that you were put here to be, is your own self. We get in our own way. We have this negative tape playing in our head that was formed from our environment growing up. It doesn't mean you have to have trauma. It doesn't mean you had to grow up bad. It is just limiting beliefs that were created that created a limiting mindset. And we talk ourselves out of things before we even get a chance. A lot of us are just cruising and living on autopilot. And so this book is about shattering limiting beliefs and getting out of your own way, because your mindset is the key to every success in your life, no matter what it is. And so it's been a true labor of love, and I'm beyond excited. I actually have my team working now on my website on fixing to put up a free chapter for everybody. So you can go to revivebyjanna.com, and that's my website. You can read all about me and what I do and my services. And yeah, the book cover is up there, but we're fixing to be downloading a freebie, so everybody can get a downloadable free chapter and get a little inside look at the book. And it will be released December 11th, so pay attention for that. And other than that, everybody can find me pretty much Revived by Janna across the board. Instagram is really where I'm the most active. And then I also have a podcast that's Revive with Janna, not by, just to confuse you. And on my podcast, I try to share all my tips, secrets, stories, and just try to help people as much as possible.
I love that. I'm going to link to all of that in the show notes, all about you, your podcast. I'm so excited to read that first chapter because I
Oh,
know your book's going to be incredible. So I'm so
thank you.
excited for that. And we'll definitely let everyone know when that is out there. But we'll let people know about your website. And I can just say, as a client personally, having to deal with some things with one of my sons, that just how fantastic you have been to work with, how many tools and tips and all of it that, and I feel like I know a lot about nutrition, but the actual knowing to doing, you were so instrumental in just making us start to make those changes.
Well, thank you. That really means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on Be the Person podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Annie. Truly, thank you.
Yes, you have an incredible story, and I love how you've healed your body with food, and now you show and help others do the same.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for joining Be the Person podcast, a podcast where we really grow together. I would just encourage you to follow, and it would mean the world to me if you would hit a 5-star review and give any feedback. Thank you so much.